Carl Jung discovered something at age 75 that would change everything we thought we knew about high blood pressure after 60. It wasn't about the blood flowing through your arteries. It was about the emotions flowing through your heart that had been trapped there for decades. Jung realized that hypertension wasn't just a physical condition. It was your body's way of telling you that you've been carrying emotional pressure for far too long. And here's what's truly remarkable. He managed to normalize his blood pressure naturally using techniques that connected his mind directly to his cardiovascular system. Tell me in the comments, are you over 60 and struggling with high blood pressure? What city are you watching from? I'd love to connect with you. You know, there's something heartbreaking that happens to so many of us after we hit 60. We start believing that our bodies are betraying us. The doctor tells you your blood pressure is high, and suddenly you're handed a prescription that you'll supposedly need for the rest of your life. You start feeling like your heart, the very organ that's been faithfully beating for you for 6 decades, is now your enemy. You worry about heart attacks, strokes, and you begin to see every headache as a warning sign. But what if I told you that Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, discovered that high blood pressure after 60 isn't your body betraying you? It's your body finally demanding that you listen to what you've been ignoring for years. Jung lived to be 85 years old, and he was vibrant and mentally sharp until his final days. But at 73, he faced his own battle with blood pressure spikes that left his doctors concerned. Instead of simply accepting medication as his only option, Jung began to investigate something that the medical community of his time completely overlooked. He started paying attention to when his blood pressure spiked, and he noticed something fascinating. Every time his pressure readings went up, he had been thinking about or dealing with unresolved emotional conflicts, old anger that he had never fully processed, resentments he had carried for decades, disappointments that he had buried so deep. He thought they were gone. This is when Jung made his breakthrough discovery. He realized that emotional pressure and blood pressure were intimately connected. Think about it. When you're angry, your face gets red, your heart pounds. You can literally feel the pressure building in your chest. Jung understood that when we suppress emotions for years, especially anger, resentment, and unprocessed grief, our cardiovascular system holds that tension. Your arteries become rigid not just from plaque, but from the rigidity of unexpressed feelings. But here's where Jung's approach became revolutionary. Instead of seeing high blood pressure as something that happens to you, he saw it as something your body was doing for you. It was your heart's way of saying, it's time to deal with what you've been avoiding. It's time to release the emotional pressure so your physical pressure can normalize. And Jung developed specific techniques that worked on both levels simultaneously. Write in the comments below. What emotion do you think has been pressuring your heart for years? Is it anger towards someone who hurt you? Disappointment about dreams that didn't come true? Guilt about choices you made? Let's talk about this together because you're not alone in carrying these invisible weights. Jung noticed that so many people after 60 carry what he called emotional debris. These are the accumulated hurts, frustrations, and disappointments that we collect over a lifetime. We think we've moved past them, but our bodies keep the score. Your blood pressure might be elevated, not because you're getting old, but because you're carrying emotional pressure that was never meant to be permanent. The beautiful thing about Jung's discovery is that it gives you back your power. You're not a victim of aging. You're not destined to decline. You have the ability to address both the emotional and physical aspects of your blood pressure simultaneously, and Jung proved this in his own life. Between the ages of 73 and 85, he not only normalized his blood pressure naturally, but he also experienced what he called his most creative and spiritually fulfilling years. Jung understood something that modern medicine is just beginning to acknowledge. Your emotional health and your physical health are not separate systems. They're one integrated system. When you heal emotional pressure, you often see immediate improvements in blood pressure. When you nourish your body properly, you often find it easier to process emotions. Jung developed a holistic approach that worked on both levels, and the results were remarkable not just for his cardiovascular health, but for his overall vitality and sense of purpose. What made Jung's approach so effective was that it didn't require you to deny your age or pretend you're still 30. Instead, it honored the wisdom and experience you've gained over 6 decades of life. Jung believed that the years after 60 could be the most meaningful and healthy of your entire life, but only if you're willing to do the inner work that younger people often avoid. He saw aging not as decline, but as the opportunity for integration, for bringing together all the scattered pieces of your life into a unified whole. So, how exactly did Jung transform his relationship with blood pressure? He developed 4 specific practices that addressed both the emotional roots and the physical manifestations of hypertension. The first thing Jung discovered was what he called the shadow of accumulated emotions. He realized that by age 60, most of us have spent decades pushing down feelings that seemed inconvenient or inappropriate. We've been taught to be strong, to not complain, to keep moving forward. But Jung understood that what we resist persists, and it persists in our bodies. Every morning at 6 a.m., Jung would sit with his journal and do something that seemed almost too simple to work. He would write for exactly 10 minutes about whatever emotions were stirring in his chest. Not the polite version of his feelings, but the raw, unfiltered truth. If he was angry at someone, he wrote about that anger. If he felt disappointed about something that happened decades ago, he let himself feel that disappointment fully on the page. Jung discovered that when emotions are acknowledged and expressed safely, they stop creating pressure in your cardiovascular system. Here's what's remarkable about this practice. Jung found that within just 1 week of daily emotional journaling, his morning blood pressure readings began to stabilize. It was as if giving his emotions a voice gave his heart permission to relax. But Jung didn't stop with just the emotional component. He paired this practice with something his research had shown him about cardiovascular health. Every morning, right after his journaling session, Jung would eat 1 raw clove of garlic. Now I know what you're thinking. Raw garlic sounds terrible, and yes, it's strong. But Jung discovered that garlic contains compounds called allicin that act as natural vasodilators. This means they help your blood vessels relax and expand, naturally lowering blood pressure. Jung would crush the garlic clove and mix it with a spoonful of honey to make it more palatable. Within 30 days of combining emotional journaling with daily raw garlic, Jung saw his blood pressure drop by an average of 15 to 20 points. Try this for 1 week and come back here to tell me how you felt. Did you notice any changes in your morning energy? Did your blood pressure readings improve? I want to hear about your experience because these small changes can create profound transformations. The second breakthrough Jung made was about the poison of resentment. He had a saying that holding on to resentment is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. Jung realized that by his 70s, he had been carrying grudges and hurts for decades. Some against people who had wronged him, some against himself for choices he regretted, and some against life itself for not turning out the way he had expected. He understood that this accumulated resentment was literally hardening his arteries, not just metaphorically, but physically. Jung developed what he called active forgiveness, and it wasn't about being noble or spiritual. It was about freeing his cardiovascular system from the burden of chronic anger. Every afternoon, Jung would spend 5 minutes in a specific forgiveness practice. He would bring to mind someone or something he needed to forgive, and he would say out loud, "I release this anger for my own health and peace." He wasn't excusing harmful behavior or pretending that wrongs didn't happen. He was simply refusing to let old hurts continue damaging his heart. What made this practice even more powerful was what Jung paired it with. Right after his forgiveness session, he would drink a cup of hibiscus tea. Jung had researched the cardiovascular benefits of hibiscus and discovered that it contains natural compounds that help regulate blood pressure by relaxing arterial walls. The deep red color of the tea reminded him that he was nourishing his heart on multiple levels, emotionally and physically. The combination was remarkable. Jung found that the afternoon forgiveness practice with hibiscus tea helped him sleep better, which in turn helped regulate his nighttime blood pressure. His morning readings became more consistent, and he noticed that he felt less reactive to daily stressors. People who knew Jung during his later years often commented on his unusual serenity for someone who had lived through so much conflict and challenge. Try forgiving someone today, even if it's yourself, and tell me how you felt afterward. Sometimes the person we most need to forgive is ourselves for the choices we made or didn't make over the decades. Jung believed that self-forgiveness was often the most important step in healing both emotional and physical pressure. Jung's approach was revolutionary because he understood that after 60, you're not trying to prevent aging. You're trying to age consciously. You're working with your body's wisdom rather than against it. Your elevated blood pressure might not be a sign that you're falling apart. It might be a sign that it's time to finally deal with emotions you've been avoiding for years. What Jung discovered is that the body after 60 becomes less tolerant of emotional avoidance. The coping mechanisms that worked in your 20s, 30s, and 40s stop working. Your body starts demanding authenticity. It wants you to feel your feelings, to process your experiences, to integrate the lessons of your life. When you honor this demand, your body often responds with improved health, including more stable blood pressure. The beautiful thing about Jung's emotional practices is that they don't require you to relive trauma or spend years in therapy. They're simple, daily practices that acknowledge your emotional reality while simultaneously supporting your cardiovascular health. The journaling gives your emotions a voice. The forgiveness practice releases the pressure. The garlic and hibiscus provide natural support for healthy blood pressure. Together, they create a holistic approach that honors both your emotional wisdom and your physical needs. The third practice Jung developed was what he called meditation of individuation, and it came from one of his most famous insights. Jung said that those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. By his mid-70s, Jung realized that most people live their entire lives reacting to external pressures without ever developing an internal awareness of how their body responds to stress. He discovered that high blood pressure was often the result of decades of unconscious reactions to life's challenges. Jung's meditation wasn't about emptying his mind or achieving some mystical state. It was about developing what he called conscious breathing, a practice of paying attention to how his body actually felt, moment by moment. Every evening at sunset, Jung would sit quietly for exactly 10 minutes and simply observe his breath while scanning his body for areas of tension. He would notice if his shoulders were tight, if his jaw was clenched, if his heart was beating rapidly. Most importantly, he would notice these sensations without trying to change them immediately. What Jung discovered through this practice was revolutionary. He found that simply becoming aware of physical tension often caused it to release naturally. When he noticed his heart beating rapidly during meditation, instead of becoming anxious about it, he would breathe slowly and steadily and watch as his heart rate gradually calmed down. This wasn't just relaxation, it was training his nervous system to respond differently to stress. The physiological benefits were immediate and measurable. Jung found that his evening meditation sessions led to better sleep, which is crucial for blood pressure regulation. During sleep, your blood pressure naturally drops, giving your cardiovascular system time to recover. But if you go to bed with a racing mind and tense body, your blood pressure may not drop as much as it should. Jung's conscious breathing practice prepared his body for the restorative sleep that's essential for healthy blood pressure. But Jung didn't rely on meditation alone. He paired this evening practice with something that provided direct nutritional support for his cardiovascular system. Right before his meditation, Jung would drink a glass of fresh beetroot juice. His research had shown him that beetroot contains natural nitrates that help dilate blood vessels and improve blood flow. The earthy, slightly sweet taste of the beetroot became associated in Jung's mind with the peaceful state he cultivated during meditation. Try meditating for 10 minutes tonight, and tell me if you noticed any difference in how your body felt. Did you discover areas of tension you weren't aware of? Did your heart rate slow down during the practice? Jung believed that this simple awareness practice could be more powerful than any medication for long-term blood pressure management. What made Jung's approach so effective was his understanding that stress isn't what happens to you, it's how your body responds to what happens to you. Most people over 60 have developed automatic stress responses that serve them well during their working years, but may be damaging their health in retirement. Jung's meditation practice helped him develop new, healthier responses to life's inevitable challenges. Jung also understood that after 60, your relationship with food needs to evolve. The fourth principle Jung developed was what he called conscious nutrition, and it was based on his insight that your body is the temple of your mature soul. He realized that the eating habits that might have worked in your younger years could be contributing to inflammation and arterial stiffness as you age. Jung became particularly interested in foods that support cardiovascular flexibility. He discovered that dark leafy greens like spinach, kale, and arugula contain compounds that help keep arteries supple and blood flowing smoothly. Every lunch, Jung would eat a large salad made primarily of these dark greens, dressed simply with olive oil and lemon juice. He found that this practice not only supported his blood pressure, but also gave him sustained energy throughout the afternoon. Jung also incorporated specific supplements that his research showed could support healthy aging and cardiovascular function. He took magnesium daily, understanding that this mineral helps relax blood vessels and regulate heart rhythm. Many people over 60 are deficient in magnesium, which can contribute to high blood pressure and irregular heartbeat. Jung also took omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil, which he knew could help reduce inflammation throughout the cardiovascular system. What was remarkable about Jung's approach to nutrition was that it wasn't about restriction or deprivation. At 80 years old, Jung was still cultivating his own garden, growing many of the vegetables he ate daily. He found deep satisfaction in nurturing the plants that would nourish his body. This connection between growing, preparing, and eating food became a meditation in itself, a way of honoring the body that had carried him through 8 decades of life. Jung believed that conscious nutrition after 60 wasn't just about physical health. It was about developing a new relationship with your body based on respect and gratitude, rather than fear and control. When you eat foods that truly nourish you, when you move your body gently and regularly, when you give yourself adequate rest, you're not trying to fight aging. You're trying to age with grace and vitality. The synergy between Jung's 4 practices was what made them so powerful. The morning journaling and garlic addressed suppressed emotions and provided cardiovascular support. The afternoon forgiveness and hibiscus tea released resentment and promoted arterial relaxation. The evening meditation and beetroot juice calmed the nervous system and improved circulation. The daily nutrition practices provided ongoing support for flexibility and inflammation control. Jung discovered that when you address high blood pressure from multiple angles simultaneously, you often see results that go far beyond just improved numbers on a blood pressure monitor. People who followed Jung's approach reported better sleep, more stable energy, improved mood, and a greater sense of control over their health. They began to see their bodies not as enemies to be controlled, but as wise allies that were communicating important information about their overall well-being. What Jung ultimately discovered about high blood pressure after 60 changed not just his health, but his entire understanding of what it means to age consciously. He realized that elevated blood pressure wasn't a sign of his body failing. It was a sign of his body asking him to finally integrate all the experiences, emotions, and wisdom he had accumulated over 7 decades of living. When he responded to this request with the practices we've discussed, something remarkable happened. Not only did his blood pressure normalize, but he entered what he described as the most creative and spiritually fulfilling period of his entire life. Jung understood that your 60s and beyond aren't about decline, they're about deepening. This is when you finally have the time and wisdom to address patterns that you may have been too busy to examine during your earlier years. Your elevated blood pressure might be your heart's way of saying it's time to slow down, not to give up, but to go deeper. It's time to feel your feelings fully, to forgive what needs forgiving, to nourish your body consciously, and to develop a peaceful relationship with the inevitable changes that come with aging. The beautiful thing about Jung's approach is that it honors your intelligence and life experience. You're not being asked to follow a complicated medical protocol or to pretend you're 30 years old. You're being invited to use the emotional and spiritual wisdom you've developed over 6 decades to support your physical health in ways that feel authentic and sustainable. Think about it this way. You've lived long enough to know that quick fixes rarely work for anything important. Jung's practices aren't quick fixes. They're lifestyle integrations that acknowledge both your emotional complexity and your body's changing needs. The morning journaling doesn't just lower blood pressure, it helps you process the accumulated experiences of a lifetime. The forgiveness practice doesn't just relax your arteries, it frees you from carrying emotional burdens that were never meant to be permanent. Jung believed that people who successfully navigate the challenges of aging are those who learn to work with their bodies rather than against them. Your body after 60 has different needs than it did at 30, and that's not a problem to be solved, it's wisdom to be honored. Your heart has been beating faithfully for you for decades. When it signals that your blood pressure is elevated, it's not betraying you, it's communicating with you. What made Jung's later years so remarkable wasn't that he avoided the challenges of aging, but that he met those challenges with curiosity, compassion, and practical wisdom. He developed physical symptoms like high blood pressure, but instead of seeing them as evidence of decline, he saw them as opportunities for deeper self-understanding and more conscious living. Jung often said that life really begins at 40, but he might have been too conservative. Based on his own experience and the people he worked with, Jung came to believe that for many people, the most meaningful and satisfying phase of life begins in the 60s. This is when you finally have the perspective to see your life as a whole. This is when you can integrate all your experiences into wisdom. This is when you can prioritize what truly matters and let go of what never really did. The 4 practices Jung developed for managing blood pressure naturally are really practices for living consciously during the most potentially wise and creative phase of your life. When you commit to daily emotional awareness through journaling, when you practice regular forgiveness for your own peace of mind, when you develop a meditation practice that connects you to your body's wisdom, and when you nourish yourself with conscious nutrition, you're not just managing a medical condition, you're creating the foundation for what Jung called successful aging. Jung lived to be 85, and people who knew him during his final years consistently reported that he seemed to grow more peaceful, more creative, and more genuinely happy as he aged. He didn't achieve this despite having health challenges like high blood pressure. He achieved it partly because he learned to respond to those challenges as opportunities for deeper self-care and conscious living. So here's what I want you to consider. What if your high blood pressure isn't a sign that you're getting old and falling apart? What if it's a sign that you're ready to enter the most conscious and intentional phase of your life? What if your body is asking you to finally prioritize your emotional well-being, to forgive what needs forgiving, to develop a peaceful relationship with stress, and to nourish yourself with the care and attention you've probably spent decades giving to other people? In the comments below, tell me which of Jung's 4 practices resonates most with you. Are you ready to try morning journaling with garlic for emotional release? Does the idea of afternoon forgiveness with hibiscus tea speak to you? Are you curious about evening meditation with beetroot juice? Or does the conscious nutrition approach feel like the right starting point? Share your thoughts because I want to support you on this journey. If you're ready to be part of a community of people who are discovering that the years after 60 can be the healthiest, most creative, and most fulfilling of their entire lives, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of people who refuse to accept decline as inevitable, who see aging as an opportunity for deepening rather than diminishing. Remember what Jung said, your life doesn't diminish at 60, it deepens, and a serene heart is the greatest treasure of that deepening. Whether you're 60, 70, 80, or beyond, you have the power to create positive changes in your health and well-being. Your body is still capable of healing, your mind is still capable of growth, and your spirit is still capable of joy. Start with one practice. Be consistent with it for a week, and pay attention to how you feel. Then come back and share your experience with our community. Together, we're proving that aging consciously isn't just possible, it's one of life's greatest adventures.